Welcome, ladies and
Ladies and
gentlemen.
gentlemen, I can't hear myself.
I
That's
know,
the
it's so weird.
problem.
Okay, that's all right. That's what they called news. And I'm Justine,
I'm Danielle.
and we're here for another episode. So this is our first time recording remotely. So we're hoping that this works okay, and we have a little bit of a lag, so we can't hear each other like right on spot. Hopefully that improves, but that was kind of a rough go of it. So back to school has started. Has your life gotten as crazy as mine?
No, well, because Mira started school the same time your kids did,
Yeah.
and she has started college courses online as well.
Oh, wow, good for
And
her.
so that was a whole fiasco because she couldn't get logged in, and then she thought she had like 12 assignments that she had to have turned in by Friday, and that wasn't quite the case. But she's getting it figured out. And
Good.
Avery doesn't start school until Wednesday,
Oh, wow.
and so I'm hoping that this year goes super awesome for him.
Me too. Yeah, we already have a volleyball scrimmage today. We've got all sorts of stuff going on. So, but today I was really excited about this week's episode, and I'm glad we finally got on to get this recorded, because we're going to be talking about the Donner Party. And who doesn't love a good tragedy story?
So we watched this movie. I'm sorry, this is relevant, I swear.
Uh-huh.
It's called I think it's called We Are What We Are, and it's like a psychological thriller type of thing. And basically it turns out that there's this family like for like 100 years ago that got trapped in a snowstorm, and the dad kept coming back with food, but the kids never knew where the food was coming from until he kind of stopped coming back, and the daughter went like and found him and found that he had like a woman strung up and was like cutting chunks of meat off of this woman to feed his children to keep them alive. And so then it became a family tradition that once a year they had to trap and eat a woman.
No.
And yeah.
Out of survival, that's one thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to pass any judgment on the people who turn to cannibalism in a fight for survival.
Yeah.
Actually, what the story says, I do disagree a little bit with, but yeah, no, we don't go out and kill people for food. That's not what we do.
No. It was just completely crazy. But
that is crazy.
Yeah.
But it sounds like something I would enjoy watching.
You should. I don't remember what we watched it on, but
I'll Google it.
Yeah.
It's what did you say it was called?
I think it's called We Are What We Are.
We Are What We Are. Okay. I'll take note of that. We Are
Who We Are. Something like that.
Cool.
Anyway, let's talk about
the Donner
tragedy of the Sierras.
Yeah, that's what we're calling this one. Okay, so this one comes from the University Missourian from April 14th, 1911. So this Missourian newspaper actually is really good, and I think I've already gotten a lot of stories from just this one newspaper. But the reason I use it the most is because, like, these are all sent out like AP news stories, right? And so all of the newspapers publish the same stories. But this one somehow got brought, like, the images of it are much clearer than a lot of other newspapers. So, like, its preservation and stuff is a lot easier for me to read when I'm going through it. So that's why I pull these stories. These stories are in tons of different newspapers, but sometimes when I pull them up to read them, they're really faded because they're really old. So it's hard for me to read. But that's why, yeah. Okay. Anywho.
It makes sense.
The April 14th, 1911, a tragedy of the Sierras. Among the graduates of the University of Missouri in 1861 was William Green Murphy, who received the degree of Bachelor of Science. Mr. Murphy came from California, from Marysville, Yuba County to be exact. The name of the family which Mr. Murphy was a member is woven into the record of one of the awful tragedies of the extreme West, a tale of starvation, cannibalism, despair, and death, the fate which came to the Donner Party among the earliest of California pioneers. It calls for no great gift of romantic imagination to picture the scenes which must have characterized the start of those brave and hardy men and women from their rallying point in Independence, Missouri. It was May, the morning of the new year, in 1846. The freshness of Missouri springtime was about, with its showers and sunshine, its birds and flowers. It was at a time when the love of adventure, of exploration, was yet young and strong in the heart of Americans, and when there was much to tempt the restless spirit to wander. One may well marvel that the heart of man should lust for greater rural beauty, more liberal harvests than the rolling prairies of Missouri must have guaranteed that in that age of her virgin loveliness. That gave me goosebumps. That was really...
That was pretty.
It was. It was a day, too, when the gulches of California, though gorged with their golden treasure, were unknown to man. The meager history of the time indicates that the lure of the sunset land was then, as today, its fruitfulness, its healthfulness, its tropic beauty, its matchless clime, meaning its climate, the weather.
Okay.
It's got nice weather, yeah. These pioneers were to go out into a region which had been looked upon by few white men. Over limitless prairies and across forbidding mountain ranges, their way must lead before the great valleys of the Sacramento and the San Joaquin could be reached. In this intervening waste, the trader, the trapper, the pathfinder matched prowess with the hostile Indian and the wild beasts in the life or death game. But the hearts of the men of the Donner Party held no fear for the future, no presentiment of the fate which was to come to them at the very entrance to California.
Bum, bum, bum.
I have to make this bigger. About 100 men, women, and children were in the party when it finally made its start from Independence on the long journey to the shores of the Pacific. Several companies of immigrants joined the Donner Party before the Rocky Mountains were reached. At Fort Bridger, Wyoming, 4 days were spent in debating as to which two routes to follow. Agreement could not be reached, and the party divided, the larger number resuming the journey by way of the old Fort Hall Road and reaching California in safety. The Donner Party, now consisting of about 90 persons, decided to take the Hastings Cutoff. It was, as it was known, by the way of Salt Lake. After resting at Salt Lake early in September, the party took up the long journey through the deserts of Utah and Nevada. They were led to believe that the waterless section of these plains covered a distance of but 50 miles of the way. Instead, for 75 miles, there was neither water nor grass, and everywhere a dreary waste of alkaline desert. Their water supply gave out. Many of their cattle became unmanageable because of intense thirst, stampeded, and were lost. The great suffering was endured before water was reached. Great suffering was endured before water was reached. Yeah. The rest of the journey to the California line is a tale of vicissitude and hardship. 3 men were lost by death. Indians harassed them and stole their cattle. Each day brought new troubles near what is now the site of Reno. The party decided... I scrolled too far. I'm used to having a paper script. Okay, let's start. Near what is now the site of Reno, the party decided to rest the cattle for a few days, preparatory to the difficult climb over the Sierras. This loss of time was fatal. Dude, I've been through Utah.
Yeah.
And it's not a lie. It's just desert.
It's barren wasteland.
I mean, there are parts of Utah that are not, obviously, but, like, there's a lot of desert there.
Like, and it takes so long. I couldn't imagine doing it on foot.
Right?
And with wagons and cattle and children and...
Yeah, and, like, so, like, they're, like, instead of 50 miles, it was 75 miles. And like now we're like, that's not that big of a deal, you know? But then that's a really big deal. That's a lot more time than
Like
you were
weeks.
anticipating.
Like
Yeah.
that's like weeks to cross that stretch of land.
Yeah, absolutely. That's crazy.
Instead of hours in a car. I can't even imagine making that drive in a car without air conditioning.
No.
Like, let alone, like I said, on foot.
Right.
No spank you.
No spank you. It was near the end of October, yet they doubtless felt they had time to cross the Sierra before the long winter of that region began. But the snow came earlier than usual, and within a few days after they left their camp at Reno, it was upon them, and they were prisoners. The wildest confusion prevailed. In their eagerness to escape, many went far in advance of the main train. All did not reach Donner Lake at the base of the Sierra the same day. Some wagons and families did not reach the lake for several days after those in the lead. They struggled through the snow and reached the foot of the precipitous cliffs at the upper end of the lake. Here, baffled, weary, disheartened, they turned back to take to the foot of the lake. I don't know why today I can say words like precipitous without any problem. My mouth is working today. It's weird.
It is.
Frequently, the long winters of the Sierra come with little warning. Today, in November, the gentle winds may be as balmy as in early June, and the blue skies give no hint that snow is distant but a day. The winter of 1846 was not of this sort, however. For days before the snow began to fall, storm clouds had been gathering, massing themselves threateningly about the lofty peaks of the Sierra. Chill winds from the north, too, told of the nearness of winter. From the head of Donner Lake, it is but 3 miles to the crossing of the summit. Yet even had the Donner party reached the summit, death must have come to many before assistance could have reached them. For nearly 60 miles on the western slopes, the deep snow belt extends. With the wagon roads of today, it is a journey of no small difficulty. That the great mountain ridges, the rocky gorges, the deep canyons, and the turbulent Yuba River could have been crossed before roads were built. This is nothing short of marvelous. Returning to the foot of the lake, the party spent some days in building cabins to protect themselves from the rigors of winter. About 2 weeks later, 12 or 15 set out to cross the mountains in an endeavor to obtain relief at Sutter's Fort in the Sacramento Valley, distant about 130 miles. They struggled heroically, but when night came, they had covered only 4 miles through the deep snow. Forlorn and discouraged, they retraced their steps, reaching camp at midnight. Many days were spent in making snowshoes and preparing for another effort to obtain relief. Provisions had run down, and starvation was imminent for all. About the middle of December, the second party, this time 17, started to cross the mountains. They took provisions to last 6 days, hoping by that time to reach Bear Valley, a distance of 30 miles or so, and possibly to find settlers there. William G. Murphy. Oh, I forgot about him. He was at the beginning of the story. That's how this whole thing started. William G. Murphy, a sturdy lad of 12, was one of the 17. He was without snowshoes, and by the time the head of the lake was reached, it was plainly evident he could not continue the journey. So, with another exhausted member, he returned to camp. The boy undoubtedly saved his life by turning back. An older brother, Lemuel, perished early in the struggle to reach relief. So the only reason we're hearing of this story from this perspective was because Mr. Murphy, then age 12, decided, I gotta go back.
Yeah.
That's nuts. I have a daughter who just turned 13 yesterday. And
could you imagine her in a situation?
No, are you kidding me?
She'd be like, it's too hot.
Oh my
it's
God.
too cold. I'm tired of walking. My feet hurt.
Oh my God. No, it would have been ridiculous. Ugh, she definitely would not have survived as a pioneer.
No.
No. Night of the first day found them but 4 miles from the foot of the lake. The next day they made 6 miles and were beyond the summit. The snow varied in depth from 12 to 60 feet.
Oh my
Feet,
God.
not inches, 12 to 60 feet.
Yuck.
The third day they traveled 5 miles, and on the 5th day one of the party perished from exhaustion and lack of food. The 6th day, their provisions, scanty from the first, were apportioned for the last time. So we're out of provisions.
Mm-hmm.
Starting to sound a whole lot like the Oregon Trail. Up
Why
to
do you
this,
think they came up with the game?
right. I don't remember ever seeing cannibals on Oregon Trail, though.
Well, I mean, they had to make it kid-friendly.
That's true. Up to this time on their journey, the weather had been clear, but a snowstorm now enveloped the mountains, and they were forced to halt. Here, assailed by the pangs of hunger, the thought of resorting to the horrible extremity of cannibalism was first expressed. Lots were drawn. Patrick Dolan held the fatal missive. They fought against the awful alternative and struggled onward several miles. The storm increased in violence, and the starving wretches huddled in the forest, unable to provide a fire. 4 of the party succumbed the first or second night, and it was unnecessary to add murder to the tale of cannibalism.
Mm.
Could you imagine just 4 people just dying in the night?
No.
Just,
Nope.
there goes 4 more. Like, that would be so hard. We are not built like this anymore.
Mm-mm.
I mean, obviously they were built like this out of necessity, and we don't have that necessity anymore, but like,
Thankfully.
our ancestors were hard ass people.
They were.
A week or more, they remained at the, quote, camp of death, and again took up the awful journey. A starved deer crossed their path and brought relief from the horrible necessity of subsisting on human flesh. The meat of the deer was soon consumed. Another member of the party passed away, and his body went to prolong the lives of the struggling, half-demented survivors. And this is the part that gets me.
Mm-hmm.
In the party, there were 2 Indians who had been sent from California to Missouri by Captain Sutter to guide the immigrants across the plains. These Indians had refused to eat human flesh and had struggled on until they could rise no more. The record says they were sacrificed, the only murder of the tale. So the Indians are like, we are not going to eat that, which seems to me like a truly like Indian, like sacred thing. Like,
yes.
So they're just like, no. So instead the white people are like, okay, we'll just kill you.
Well, also I feel like back then it was, just kind of a typical mindset that people of different skin colors were not really people.
Right. Also that.
And
yeah.
So it wasn't really cannibalism because they're not really people, right?
Yeah, they were just savages. Yeah, it's just crazy to me.
Yep.
So there was a murder. They murdered 2 natives, indigenous peoples, who were supposed to be guiding them. They were their guides.
Seems like a bad plan to
It doesn't sound like a great idea, but the party of 15 was now reduced to 7, 5 women and 2 men. The day after day they toiled on, sustained by the flesh of the Indians. Starvation faced them once more, and murder alone offered life. When crawling around a point of the hill, they came in view of an Indian rancheria. They were saved. But this is but half of the tale, half of the horrors and sufferings, the death which came to the party before the last survivor was rescued from Donner Lake by men sent from Sutter's Fort. Into the record of this awful tragedy are woven instances of heroic devotion, of self-sacrifice, of love for others, scarcely to be paralleled in the pages of history. There were 90 members in the party which was trapped by that October snowstorm at the lake. Of these, 42 perished. That's almost half. The Murphy family name fills a prominent place in California's early history. the city of Marysville was named in honor of Mary Murphy. William G. Murphy, after graduating from the University of Missouri, practiced law in Virginia City, Nevada for a time, and then returned to Marysville, where he was prominent in politics until his death in 1904. So little William Murphy made it through.
Way to go, kid.
One who enters California today by the Central Pacific route passes within a short distance of the camping spot of the Donner Party. The dark snow sheds, however, hide all view of the historic spot, except a fleeting glimpse of the lake at the occasional openings in the sheds. 2 decades from that awful winter of 1846 to 47, and the tragedy which it brought, the Central Pacific Railroad bored its way through the backbone of the High Sierra and crept around the granite walls far above the lake. Man had conquered for all time the battlements of California's eastern gateway. Winter snows could never again block the path of those who sought for home in that western land. Each summer, the fires of the hunter, the stockman, the camper burn about the picturesque shore of Donner Lake. And when winter comes, gay skaters glide upon its icy surface. Few, if any, are left today of the Donner Party, but the lake will serve for all time as a memorial of the appalling tragedy which came into their lives. FWC.
My goodness.
Yeah. Okay,
I
so
can't even imagine.
Yeah, I've got a few more stories. I actually haven't looked this over, so I'll just let you know when you can jump in. All right. So this one comes from the Mojave County Miner and Our Mineral Wealth from December 30th, 1921. The headline is Death of the Last Survivor Recalls Tragic Story of the Donner Party. San Francisco, December 14th. The recent death in Byron, California, of Mrs. Frances E. Wilder, a daughter of Captain George Donner, has recalled the tragic story of the Donner Party, 42 of whom perished in the deserts and mountains in the winter of 1846 to 47, while en route to California. Only a half-dozen survivors remain today to tell the tale of that most disastrous of all migrations of agronauts, in which they participated in as children. So agronauts, do you know for sure what that is? I'm assuming that's like people who are going for like farmers. Like,
I feel like travelers. Like,
I'm gonna Google it since I have this open. Agronauts. Agronauts meaning someone who sets off on a daring quest.
Okay.
In The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy and her friends are agronauts in search of a brain, a heart, and courage. Okay, well, yes, we are on a brave quest. This is a brave quest. Okay. Among these half-dozen are 3 sisters of Mrs. Wilder, children of the captain from whom the party took its name. They are Mrs. Eliza P. Houghton of Los Angeles, 78. I apologize if I don't pronounce these names correctly. I'm going to pronounce them the way we would say them here. So, Mrs. Lena App of Jamestown, California, 86. And Mrs. Elitha C. Wilders of Bruceville, California, 89. A daughter of James F. Reed, a member of the party, who forced his way over the snow-capped Sierra Mountains and then returned with relief for his dying companions, is living in Capitola, California. Her name is Mrs. Mattie Lewis, and she is a bright-eyed lady, 77 years young.
Aww.
Of all the companies that made their way by ox wagons on the overland trail across the desert and mountain to California before the railroad linked east with west, the experiences of the Donner Party were the worst. Theirs was the greatest loss of life, and it was attended by a slow starvation during the 6 months they were held in the high Sierras that finally drove the stronger members of the party to that last expedient of man, feeding upon his own kind. 6 months. Nuts.
No, thank you.
Of the 88 men, women, and children that started with or joined the Donner Party, 42 perished. 6 died in the deserts of Utah and Nevada, and 36 succumbed to the horrors of the mountain camps. All of the suffering and loss of life may be ascribed to the primary mistake in taking a southerly course around the Great Salt Lake from Fort Bridger, Wyoming, instead of the usual course around the northern end. The rocky passes in the Wasatch Mountains of Utah delayed them 1 month. The sands of the Great American Desert and the Humboldt Sink stalled their wagons and starved their cattle. The party was in starving condition when it reached the Truckee Meadows, site of the present city of Reno, Nevada, October 19th, 1846. The immigrants were met there by Charles T. Stanton, who had preceded them to California, and returned with 2 Indians, Louis and Salvador. I'm not sure those are their real names. Louis and Salvador, bringing 5 mule loads of provisions. After some delay, the party pushed on, but October 23rd found themselves stalled in snow at the foot of the precipices at an elevation of 6,000 feet, from which the trail rose in 1.5 miles, 12,000 feet to the summit, where 2 to 5 feet of snow lay. They were in a pocket of the mountains. A snowfall began that in a week placed 10 feet of snow about them. That's so much snow.
So much.
Some
Remember
were
that
at,
time we got 2 feet of snow overnight and we were all like, we're gonna die. It's the end of the world.
I will die. I do not love snow, especially 12 feet of snow. That's not okay. Some were at Prosser Creek, some at Alder Creek, and some at Donner Lake. They erected tents and brushwood huts, about which they wrapped rubber coats and quilts. There were, at this time, 81 persons in the camps, 24 men, 16 women, and 43 children. In the subsequent happenings, the women showed the greater courage and endurance. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Of the 15, only 5 died, and 4 of these gave their lives to aid or comfort their children or companions.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't that just sound like a womanly thing to do?
It does, indeed.
On December 16th, the, quote, forlorn hope started over the snow on foot. It consisted of 9 men, 5 women, and a boy. 6 days later, Stanton, the rescuer, gave out and was abandoned. A storm began Christmas Day, halted them a week. 3 men died and were eaten. January 4th, another man succumbed and was eaten. William Foster pursued and shot the Indians. See, there you go. Mm-hmm. Louis and Salvador, who were eaten. See, he just hunted them, basically.
Wow. The
party came out of the snow January 1st, were aided by Indians who gave them acorn bread and helped them to Johnson's rancho. I'm going to say they didn't tell those Indians about the other ones.
I would assume not.
They had been 32 days coming from Donner's Lake, and 8 had died. 2 men survived, and all the 5 women. The experiences of the 4 relief parties, from the first that left Sutter's Fort February 5th to the last April 13th, were similar to those of the, quote, forlorn hope party. Going in on their return trips, in several instances, these caches were destroyed by wild animals, so that the return trips with the emaciated, weakened Donner Party became struggles with death, in which many died and were eaten by their starving companions. So it sounds like they were coming, like they went and got the help. They were coming back as rescue relief parties, and they were stashing supplies along the way so that when they came back with the other people who were stranded, they would have supplies. Mm-hmm. But the wild animals were destroying all of those caches. So it didn't work as what it was supposed to be. The 4th and last relief party started from Johnson's Ranchero, April 13th. They had been promised by the alcalde, the mayor, half of the fortune of several $1,000 in money and goods which George Donner was supposed to possess. The 7 men of the party under William O. Palin reached Donner Lake in 4 days. Louis Keseberg was the only one alive, and of the many who had not been able to accompany the relief parties who had preceded them. Of Keseberg, the relief men demanded money, accusing him of having robbed, killed, and eaten George Donner and his wife, Tamsin. Keseberg finally gave them $500, which he said Mrs. Donner had requested him to give to her children should he reach California. The fourth relief started back the next day. Kesselberg followed them as well as he could with an injured leg. Each night he managed to make camp and finally reach civilization. To the end of his life, he was an object of accusation and aversion, although most survivors and historians agree that he was innocent. Yeah, I'm going to say, I'm going to say he was innocent. I'm going to say when things are like that, you can't just go, I'm going to go find the starving man and I'm going to demand him give me everything he stole from all of these people. Right. This guy's, dying. Go find the shit yourselves. What the hell? What do you want from me? I'm dying. Okay. Sorry. The brightest part of the story was the heroism of the women. Of the 5 who died, Mrs. Donner gave her life to be with her husband at his death. Mrs. Jacob Donner remained with her 4 children. Mrs. Graves stayed for the sake of 4 little ones, and Mrs. Murphy cared for her son and 3 grandchildren until too ill to accompany rescues. Too ill to accompany the rescuers. Sorry. The zeal of Mrs. Patrick Breen was mainly due to the rescue of her husband and 11 children who had been left in the snow while the relief party went forward for help when they discovered a cache had been destroyed. Mrs. Breen kept fires burning, nursed children with a little sugar and water, and kept them alive until rescue came. She would not feed upon bodies and of some who had died, nor did the children with her knowledge. The efforts of James F. Reed undoubtedly saved many lives. Banished to the desert in Nevada for having fatally stabbed James Snyder when Snyder struck Mrs. Reed with a whip while the 2 men were fighting. Yeah, I would have killed him too. Mm-hmm. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't have. Reed made his way by horseback over the mountains to California ahead of the Donner Party. Although he did not fully realize the seriousness of their condition, he caused the first relief party to be dispatched, and himself led the second expedition.
It turns out he wasn't such a bad guy.
Turns out he was just protecting his wife. A Chicago woman asked her husband how he liked the supper. Oh, sorry, I think that's the end of my part. I'm going to let you go ahead and go start from now. Yeah, so Donner Party, wild story. That's a wild story.
That is very crazy.
I like seeing the actual names and calling out of what each person did. Mrs. Breen keeping the children taken care of and helping the ill, and it's just really, it's really cool.
It is.
Okay.
A Chicago woman asked her husband how he liked the supper she had just prepared. When he replied that it was not worth eating, she had him arrested. Mighty little show for a man to be honest these days. My goodness. The Revolving Door. It's a comedy. And the scene is the Columbia Post Office. It's a comedy and sometimes almost a tragedy, every minute of the day at the revolving door of the Columbia Post Office. A little white terror crouched on the post office steps yesterday, puzzling how to get by the door. After some minutes, he decided it was done and dashed for one of the compartments when it had almost closed. If he had had a tail, he would not have it now. The revolving door admitted 713 persons yesterday. In an hour, and everyone entered in a different way. Some walked meditatively up the steps, stepped calmly into the turning doors. Others swung into the door with their shoulders, like a guard tearing a hole through an opposing 11. Thinking that's a football term? I don't know.
Yeah,
okay.
That is for sure. Yep.
Then another imagined he was carrying the ball and would give the door a stiff arm as he went through it.
Like the Heisman?
Yes. That was.
They don't know how to work the door. This revolving door is really getting them.
Women had the greatest fear of the door. One woman waited until the door had stopped, then walked slowly in. Her dress caught in the door behind her, and she stopped. She did not notice that her dress was holding the door and pushed her hardest to get on through. A man behind saw the trouble and pulled the door back a few inches, and the door spun on. Another woman passed halfway through the door, then changed her mind and attempted to turn back. She was in the can't come back class, for the door continued its whirl. Boys,
Those are things you just never like think about. Or like taking little kids to the mall for the first time and they see the escalator and they're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What is that? Like, I love that. It's
My
so
favorite is the moving sidewalk at DIA.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the first time my kids got to see, well, I guess really the only time they got to see that, they were just like, what? It was so much fun.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Boys ran through the door, but there was one little Negro that concluded it looked too much like a paddling machine and stayed out.
He was smart. He's like, oh, no, that looks like something my mama would have used.
Right?
No, thank you.
Oh. Now we have a move against profanity.
Oh, shit.
I
wouldn't have done well then.
Me either. The move of different organizations to protest against blasphemy and profanity on the streets and public places is being taken up by nearly every religious class in the country. Quote, I think it is one of the best moves made in a decade, end quote, said Olive Vale, the prima donna of Miss Nobody from Starland, which will be seen at Columbia Theater Wednesday, April 19th. A newspaper representative recently. Quote, I have always wondered why such a movie wasn't made, and I, for one, am very pleased to know that it has attracted the attention of someone beside those that travel. There is said to be a great amount of swearing in the musical companies, but that it is a mistake, for it has become almost extinct for the reason that the managers have made a rule of placing a fine on the members who dare express themselves in a loud and profane manner. And when the fine does not stop them, then they are discharged from the company.
They have a swear jar.
Basically. I was never surrounded by a more moral crowd of girls and boys than I am with the Starland Company. I hope this time is near when this vile habit will be eternally bottled out. It is a bad habit and nothing else. Well, shit, fuck, damn.
And that's all an advertisement. This was an advertisement for not swearing.
Cussing.
And apparently going and seeing this Miss Nobody from Starland. That's hilarious. Maybe they're like promoting it. Like, this doesn't have cussing, so you can come watch it.
Right?
I think I love the saying that, like, I sprinkle profanity in, like,
yeah, like glitter.
Yes, like glitter. Like, it just spices things up a little bit. I don't feel like I do it too much, but I'll drop an F-bomb here or there, and I'm not going to be ashamed about it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just a word.
Okay. Modest Millions. A young Chicago clerk recently inherited a tidy sum from an uncle who had gone oil prospecting and showed a pardonable elation when the news was brought by his attorney. And now, concluded the lawyer, who knew the youth's affairs fairly well, I venture to say that you will pay off a lot of your debts. At first, I thought I would, replied the young man, but I've decided to make no change in my manner of living. I don't want to be accused of any vulgar display.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I could pay off my debts, but why would I? I don't want to be presumed vulgar.
So here's my thought about that is if he had like crazy gambling debts and like that sort of stuff, you really don't want that type of people to know that you've come into that money.
Exactly.
Because those are
Like,
the type
what
of
kind of
people
debts are we
that,
having here?
yeah, like maybe if you just didn't pay your electric bill or something, that might be one thing.
Yeah, go ahead and
But
pay that.
yeah, I'm assuming we don't want the bookie to know that you suddenly have
No,
millions
no,
of
no,
dollars
no.
or something.
Nope.
Mhm.
Just drop
Anyway,
it to him slowly.
yeah, make payments.
Yeah.
um, the difference. All optimistic husbands and father on December 26th, as with signs of relief, they view their pocketbooks. Christmas is past.
Woohoo! I think that goes for mothers nowadays as well. Probably
I
not then because
agree.
they weren't dealing with pocketbooks, but
Yeah.
no kidding. Relief is what it is.
Yes. I
I
think
thought
it's
I would be
already.
relieved when summer was over and school was starting.
Uh-huh.
I'm
No,
not.
it just makes everything way busier.
I just,
But I
it's always
also,
busy. It's always the same amount of busy. It's
uh-huh.
not, summer doesn't get, it's just always busy all the time.
It's just a different kind of busy.
Always. Yeah, for sure.
But also I feel like that is our reminder that it's time to start Christmas shopping so that we are not completely flat ass broke by the time Christmas gets here.
And you know it's not going to happen.
I know. Hmm. Okay. Perfectly logical. The wages you demand are very high for a cook who has no experience, I think. But that may be, ma'am, but I think how much harder it is for me when I don't know anything about it.
I mean,
Speaking of high wages demanded, Eldon was reading a story this morning about the Canadian Railway. They went on strike. The Canadian Railway is shut down because they
do they
wanted
have
higher wages.
railways like England has railways?
Yes, like it
Oh, okay.
people
It's like
transport
mass
and goods
transportation.
transport.
Okay.
So the railway is shut down. There people like millions of people can't get to work, or I don't know about millions, but lots and lots of people cannot get to work and they're not delivering any of the goods. Like all of it is just stuck where it is because the railway workers aren't doing it because they had entered negotiations about their pay rate or something to that effect and the government was like, they're bluffing. And they called the bluff because,
Good for them. I hope
yeah,
they get what they're needing.
right.
Um, oh man, I had a story. It was just happened. I can't remember what it was now. It was along those lines. I don't remember. I'll think of it someday.
Okay. Well,
Squirrel.
now we have double barreled embarrassment. She was the daughter of a multimillionaire. He was a visiting English nobleman. At least that's what they had told each other at the seashore resort. And then, when she discovered that he came from her own modest little Midwest city, she was horrified. But remonstrated? What? How do you say that word?
Remonstrated.
Remonstrated. The friend who had brought her the evil news. I can't see why this is so very terrible. You never see him if you don't care to. But I can't very well get out of it, wailed the girl, since it appears that he's the man who collects the instruments on our
No.
phonograph
Nope, not the instruments.
installments. But I can't very well get out of it, wailed the girl, since it appears that he's the man who collects the installments on our phonograph.
So he
So
comes to her
he's
house and,
he's the
and picks up
phonograph
her payments.
salesman.
Yeah.
That's funny. Do you think everybody knows what a phonograph is?
Oh God, I bet there's people who don't know what a phonograph is.
That's
How do
funny.
you explain that? It's like a box with a horn.
It's a
Plays
record
music.
player. Do you know
Uh,
what a record is? It's a big
oh my,
round
it's a
disc.
thing and it's got little grooves in it and the little thing it spins. Dude,
Google it.
the
Just
way
Google it.
records work is still mind-boggling to
It
me.
really is.
I
The
do
fact that
not
they
understand how you put the
install, like
little thing in.
implant sound in that groove. It doesn't make any
How
sense.
does it work?
I don't know.
I mean, like I know like theoretically how it works, but like in my human brain, it's like, what?
Yes.
Anyway.
Nope, I'm with you.
Records blow my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Transposing the terms. A Western jury had been called upon to decide a dispute over the ownership of some cattle which the defendant had been accused of stealing. It soon became apparent to all that he was innocent, and the jury was out but a few minutes. Judge, replied the foreman to the usual question from the court, we find the plaintiff guilty. This court is trying the defendant, not the plaintiff, interposed the judge. There was a hasty consultation in the jury box, at the close of which the foreman rose again. Judge, he declared, we find the defendant not guilty. Howsoever, Judge, it appears like to us we've been trying the wrong man.
They're like, no, the plaintiff's guilty. And he's like, but that's not why we're here.
That's not how this works.
That's not what we're doing.
Nope.
Try again.
Business acumen. Father had invested in a ticket to the merry-go-round for his youthful son, and was surprised to see the latter thoughtfully watch the cavorting animals, and make no effort to get aboard. What's the matter? Don't you like it? He asked. Oh, yes, replied the canny youth, but I was just wondering whether I'd get a longer ride if I had the horse on the inside the circle, or the one of the lions on the outside row.
That's a really good thought.
That brain is working real hard.
Yeah, I don't think I care. Carousels make me so nauseous.
Yeah.
I can do a roller coaster or like a tilt-a-whirl and be fine. But swings and carousels, no. If you're going to spin me, you better be spinning me really fast. I don't want to be able to see like parts of details as I go by. That really messes me up.
It's, for me, this sounds really goofy because I'm sitting perfectly still while it's happening, but like when I go get my hair done, the floor in that salon, the black and white checkered pattern, if I'm like watching my phone and I can just see that pattern behind my phone, it makes the room spin.
That is crazy.
I don't know why.
Eyes are also weird.
They are. All right. Last couple little ones. Are you ready?
I am.
Okay. The torrid zone. You bet it gets pretty cold here. Let's start that over. You bet it gets pretty cold where I come from, said the man from North Dakota. I've been 35 below many a time. Call that cold? Sneered the man from Minnesota. Why, where I come from, we put out a fire to save coal when it warms up that much. God.
You know what? Okay, just, I don't mean to bring politics into it, but Tim Walz, the VP pick for the Democrats, he's the Minnesota governor. And that just, he's like total dad vibes. I don't know if you've like seen anything about him or watch it at all. I don't think you do. But I'll have to send you some memes because they like, these Tim Walz memes are like killing me. They're like big dad energy memes. And it's like, Tim Walz will be the guy like mowing the White House lawn every Sunday with his white New Balances, like just stuff like that. So this, call that cold. Why, where I come from, we put fires out to save coal. You know, like that sounds like something he would totally say, especially being from Minnesota.
Yes.
Anyway, I just thought it was funny. And you should just totally look up some Tim Walz memes because they're great. It's real like the karate guy.
Mr. Miyagi?
No, not karate. No. Gosh darn it. What's his name?
I don't know.
You know, he's like, oh my God, he was like an action hero. Played Walker, Texas Ranger.
Oh, yep.
Why can't I? Chuck Norris. Jesus Christ. Thank you. Holy cow. It's got real Chuck Norris vibes. You know, like Chuck Norris is so strong that he pushes the world down when he does push-ups. It's like it's those types of memes, but for Tim
Nice.
Wall's big dad energy. So
Okay.
it's really, really up my alley for humor. Anyway, continue.
Okay. This one says bearing his iron cross. Ruba, what was Binks all excited about? Dub, he just saw a Marine without a sharpshooter's medal. Huh?
I'm gonna bet that my husband will find that funny when he's editing this.
Okay, well,
And
John,
I'll
I'm
have him
gonna need
explain
you
it to us.
to, yeah, I'm gonna need you to leave a comment or maybe just insert a
I'm
little
gonna guess
sound
it's
bit.
like, we don't ever see Marines without sharpshooters. See,
Sharpshooter medals?
I could say
I
all
don't
those
know.
hard words today and I couldn't say that one.
All right, here's our last one. Enough is sufficient. Did you meet many of the nobility while you were in Europe? Not enough to hurt my reputation.
That's great.
I
That's
liked
good
that
stuff.
one. That was good.
Oh man, I'm so glad we just like jumped on to get this done and out.
Yes.
And yeah, I love the story of the Donner Party. As
It's pretty
sad
great.
and tragic as it is, it's just a really cool snapshot of that time in history and what they had to go through just to get from one place to another.
Yes.
It's like, I mean, we live in the Midwest. We have to drive sometimes
Everywhere.
hours without seeing things.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I come and visit you, you know, driving through all those hills and things,
Yeah.
like I just imagine what the settlers had to go through to get across that land. Like,
Right. Because you know that there wasn't just that perfectly nice little stretch of
yeah,
flat
no,
land
like
for them to
the
cross.
roads are completely cut out through hills. Like
Yes.
it's, and there's so like at some points it looks just like a little like a memory foam mattress type of, or like, you know, the egg carton mattresses,
Yes.
you know, like that's what it looks like, just because like rolling hills. Like just imagine having to go up and down and up and down. There's not a flat, like, I mean, there's a lot of flat land a little bit to the east of me, but like, yeah, it's just crazy. And then I also like to imagine it being underwater because, you know, like we used to be an inland lake. So like, I just imagine all these hills covered in water. I don't know if anybody else does that while they drive.
Well, because I was thinking about what is it, Monument Rock, and how like that the whole story thing that goes along with that, and just the fact that all, like you said, all of this was underwater, and how crazy that is, because like you don't think of this area as being
Wet.
yeah,
Right?
right, yeah,
We don't have lakes. Like we don't
no,
have water, and any sort of lake that we have is man-made. Like it's because we put in a reservoir
yep,
to stop the water because there is no water. So imagine like these people trying to go from Missouri all the way through Kansas, through the mountains of Colorado, into the mountains of the Nevadas. Like that is insane.
it is.
Insane
But
to the membrane.
yesterday, sorry, not yesterday, the night before, it rained. Like it dumped. Okay? And out our back door, there's like a little concrete pad, and our garage is set off right over there. Well, Eldon had parked, I put my car in the garage because weather, and he had parked kind of behind, like in front of the garage. So I wasn't able to get my car out, and he was stayed home yesterday and I needed to get to work. So I was like, I'm just going to take your car. And he was like, okay, that's fine. So I go out and I put all of my stuff in his car, but I'm like, crap, I need my badge for work. So I went to the side door of the garage to go in and it always washes down mud, dirt,
Mhm.
whatever, and it deposits it right there in front of that little side door.
Mhm.
So I was walking and I saw the mud, and so I slowed way down and I took little bitty baby steps,
Mhm.
and I one step and then my second step into the mud, my right foot went and I fell on my knee, my left knee, and I reached up and I grabbed the doorknob and I screamed all loud, and my toes like scraped across the ground in the mud, and my shin was covered in mud, and my shoes and everything, and I was so upset because I was in a hurry,
Mhm.
and then I
Mhm. And
fell
now
in the
you're
mud,
covered in mud.
and I was just frustrated, and I walked back up to the door and I asked, like, I opened it and hollered inside and asked Eldon to bring me paper towels, and he's like, "Why? What happened?" And I was like, "Just bring me paper towels." And he goes, "Did you fall?" "Oh no." And he like rushed up and was so great and like cleaned me
Mhm.
off and everything. And while he's like literally washing my feet for me, I text my boss and I was like, "So I fell in mud. I'll be there as soon as I get cleaned up." And she responded and was like, "No."
That's the worst. Okay, so you want to
Oh,
hear my story about when it rained?
yeah.
Clearly, we get rain so often.
Yeah.
So it didn't look like it had rained that bad. You know my driveway.
Mhm.
So it didn't look like it had rained that bad. I took the car to work. I
Mm,
made it all the way through the driveway
yeah.
up until the right before the road.
Mhm.
Okay, my driveway's like a half a mile long. It is full of bumps and large rocks. It's
Because
a
your
dirt
landlord doesn't
gravel
know
driveway.
how to grade a driveway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not great. There's no water drainage. It's bad.
Yep.
So anyway, I get to the end of the driveway where we have been wearing a very large hole in the
Mhm.
ground. But my landlord had come and tried to fill it in. So I was like, should be good. He doesn't pack anything down.
No, it was
So
just
when I got to it, I just stuck.
mhm.
I just got stuck. And so I called John. I said, I need you to come get me and take me to work. I'm stuck in the car. He's like, okay. Generally, once it dries out a little bit, we can just drive it out.
Mhm.
So we came back that night and tried to get it out. It wouldn't come out. So because we have issues with rats,
Mhm.
and if the car is parked at the house, they will eat the wires. And so we went to town and got rat repellent,
Mhm.
and we got like traps and poison.
Mhm.
And we put everything in the hood of the car, propped it open a little bit to try to keep them out.
Mhm.
Came back the next day and they had eaten through the fucking wires.
Oh,
Now we
Jesus.
can start the car, but we can't drive the car.
Oh
So
no.
it's stuck at the end of my driveway with the hood up, and we just keep setting traps and catching ginormous freaking pack rats. And we're waiting for somebody to come and tow it
Mhm.
because we can't, like, I don't have a means to tow it. And they're like, yeah, we'll come and get it when we have the time. Like, it's just getting worse and worse by the day. Can you
Yeah.
guys hurry? Like, I don't care if you can't work on it. Just get it to town where there's not
Right.
rats. Oh my God. Okay.
Need to take it to, well, the only guy with the tow truck has all of the stray cats at his shop. So you need to take
Right?
it there. Or tell
Pick
him
up
to
a
bring
few
the
strays.
cats out to the
So
car.
we're told we can't have cats. We have 4 dogs, but we're not allowed
Mhm.
to have any cats. And I'm like, I just
Sure.
want a couple outdoor cats to
Yeah.
keep the rats down. And so we're not allowed. It's not allowed. And I just think it's the silliest thing. But I also hate cats, and I get it. I don't want them in
Mhm.
the house. It's fine. But I told my husband this morning, I was like, let's just like bring home a handful of strays, and we can
Turn
set
them
a
loose.
yeah, we'll just turn them loose. If they live, they live. If
Yeah.
they don't, they don't. But maybe it will help with our rabbit and rat population here.
Mhm.
Oh my God, this is getting really long, and I'm really sorry, you guys. But stories are over, so if you feel like you need to move on, but so this morning my daughter had a sleepover last night, and her
Mhm.
friend just really has a hard time making it all the way through the night, and so almost every time she stays, I end up taking her in.
Mhm.
Usually it's around 10. Last night it was 1:30. She had
Oh
fallen
wow.
asleep and then woke up and couldn't get back to sleep.
Mhm.
That's fine. So I drove her into town. Well, we walk out the freaking front door, and right across my driveway,
Mhm.
I'm going to say this is 70 feet from where my house is, where we walk out the door. I don't know. measurements aren't my thing.
Mhm.
But there was a freaking coyote just
Uh-huh.
standing there. And he looked at me and I looked at him and we were like, oh. And he started walking off down the hill with his head turned back. He
Mhm.
watched me until he
Oh,
was out of sight. And I was like, okay, let's go now. Like,
yeah.
I have seen coyotes, I don't even know how many
Right.
times, but I have never walked out on, like, seen one in my
Mhm.
yard. Like, that was nuts.
We were sitting out at a friend's house. They live just south of town. Um, uh, like a game night type of thing, and we're sitting at their kitchen table, and they have a sliding glass door that looks out in their backyard, which is overlooks like kind of a ravine and a hill over here. Anyway, we watch a coyote run across like outside of their yard because they just have a barbed wire fence out there. Watch the coyote run chasing a rabbit, and then we watch the rabbit come through the yard, like just out past their patio. And then about 2 minutes later, the coyote comes through their yard after like searching for that rabbit. So the guy goes and gets a gun of some variety, I don't know. And he goes and he stands outside, and then Eldon goes and stands outside, and then I go and stand out. So pretty soon we're all just standing outside, like whispering to each other, like the coyote isn't long gone or something. And we never saw it again, but it was like 20 feet from the house. It was ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Yep.
All right, well, I must move on to my next adventure,
Okay.
volleyball and grocery shopping.
Have so much fun with that.
Oh, I will. Well, guys, thanks for listening. We hope you keep listening, and you could catch us on social media at Facebook and Instagram at That's What They Called News, Twitter at That's News Pod, and you can email us any story ideas you might have at That's What They Called News at gmail.com. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.